I'm going to start cooking supper here in a little bit. And, I got thinking, I'm just going to bring you guys along with me because I'm cooking up some elk steak tonight. It was gifted to us by one of the ladies that we work with at school. Her husband had killed an elk, and she gave us a package of burger, I think, and then a package of elk steak. So I thought, well, I've got time tonight, which I've been out in the garden today, so I look pretty wild. But anyways, I wanted to cook this elk steak up. And, there's not very many videos out there that really show you, you know, a lot of different ways to cook wild meat. And we eat a lot of wild game. We eat deer, and of course we're eating elk. We eat turkey, wild turkey. And I've got some pheasant in the freezer. And Danny does a lot of fishing, which means we eat a lot of fresh fish out of our beautiful rivers and lakes here in Arkansas. So I'm going to get started cooking this elk steak, and I'm going to bring you along with me so you can see what kind of recipe I'm going to use tonight. My lard's over here in my pan heating up, and here's my elk steak. And I had seasoned it ahead of time. Well, first it was already cut up, and then I took my tenderizer and I beat the heck out of it, so it should be pretty tender. But with all my wild meat, steaks like deer steaks or elk steaks, even my wild turkey breasts and stuff, I always soak it in sweet milk or buttermilk because that helps get rid of a little bit of that wild taste out of your meat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade this off. And I've got me a bowl here. And this is what I'm going to dredge my steak in. I've got some all-purpose flour. Now if you want to, you can add just a little bit of baking soda in there and stir it up. And that helps to for a crisp crust on the outside of your steak. But this is going to be smothered, so I'm really not worried about that. Now I put a little bit of garlic. I'm going to put a little bit of salt, not much. Because when I seasoned my steak, I seasoned it with garlic, salt, pepper, paprika, and a little bit of cumin. I always season my meat, and then I'll come back through, even like when I'm frying chicken, and I always season my flour too. That's just the way I've always done it. I like a lot of seasoning. And put just a little bit more salt, not much. I put some pepper, and I may just put me a little bit more garlic. Now you can put any kind of seasoning you want to in here. I'm just going to stir that up good. My lard's getting good and hot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fry a piece at a time. I'm just going to bring it out of my buttermilk. Out of my sweet milk. Just dredge it in my flour just like you would. Now if you don't, you could use this recipe with just regular beef round steak if you wanted to. Okay, I'm going to put it in my pan. And I'm going to fry it up. I don't want to cook it to death, but I'm going to fry it and get it good and brown, get it done in the middle. Shouldn't take long. I'm going to do that to each one of my pieces of steak. You know, some people say they just can't hardly eat wild meat. It just has too much of a wild taste. And it is, some of it, Danny and I have noticed that, because we've ate wild meat all of our life. And sometimes you can harvest a deer and it be the best tasting stuff. And then the next time, like an old doe or something, you can harvest her and you can't hardly eat her. We've had that to happen before. Danny killed a doe one time that, we couldn't eat that meat. It was just so stout we couldn't do it. But most of the time, it's really good stuff. And wild meat's good for you. So, anyways, I'm going to get these elk steaks fried up, and I'll come back and we'll go to the next step. I believe that's pretty brown on that one side. Look how pretty that is. So I'm going to turn them over. Oh, that looks good. Looks like chicken fried steak. One of my sides, I've got some rice in my rice cooker. And I just got a little bit of beef broth. Well, what I've done is I put a cup of rice, 2 cups of water, and I put me a little bit of beef broth granules in there with a little bit of garlic and a little bit of thyme. And that should be done in about 20 minutes or so. You see my garlic hanging here, and this is where it's hung all winter. I braid it, and I just hang it up there so it'll dry good, and it has stayed good all winter. And I even leave a little bit of the dirt on there because it stays better that way. I left some of the good little brown bits in the bottom of the pan. That's always the good stuff that makes your sauce taste good. I've got a tablespoon of butter. I'm just going to melt that a little bit. And I have got a half of a large onion, or you can use one small onion. Now, we like a lot of onion, so y'all may not want to use this much onion. But you have to consider, too, that it's going to cook down. So it's just up to you. I know this pan is going to get full of onions, but like I said, it's going to cook down. Onions are really good for you, and we just love the taste that it gives to everything. And since I'm making a salt, put a little bit of salt in there, but since I'm making a sauce, and I'm going to caramelize these onions, and it just makes that sauce taste so good. So I'm going to let these cook down, let them get good and brown, and then we'll put some mushrooms in it. And you see how you see how the onions have cooked down, or they're getting cooked down. They still got a little bit of cooking and browning today, but they're starting to get golden. But I like for them to get good and brown. Now I'm going to put probably about half a cup of mushrooms in here, and I'm just going to let them saute with the onions for about 5 minutes or so. And it's all going to get really good and brown, and it's going to give that meat a really good taste. This stuff is looking so good, I tell you, and it smells so good. Now I'm going to put my garlic in here, and I'm going to cook this probably about 5 minutes. Let that garlic cook down just a little bit. So my mushrooms and onions are really looking good. And I'm going to put about, I think it was a fourth of a cup of Marsala cooking wine. And I'm going to cook this for probably about 5 minutes and let it reduce a little bit. And I got my garlic in there. So we'll let that reduce just a little bit before we put the beef broth in. Okay, the masala has cooked down just a little bit. And now I'm going to put probably about 3/4 cup of some good beef broth. If it don't look like enough, you can put just a little bit more because you want enough sauce to cover all your meat. So I'm going to bring that up to a simmer. But the first thing I want to do is I'm going to put my meat back in the pan, and I'm going to just kind of put it down in the sauce. Just kind of nudge it down in there. And I can smell that Marsala cooking wine. It smells so good. And the garlic. And I guess I could have used a bigger pan too. But I'll get it all in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find me a lid, and I'm going to put a lid on here. I'm going to put it on a low simmer. And I'm just going to let it simmer probably about 15 minutes. Keep an eye on it. Let that sauce kind of... Okay, let's plate this stuff up. I got me a little bit of sweet corn. I got my rice here. I'll put Mr. Brown just a little bit of rice. We like our rice good and done. Some people like it like noodles al dente, but we like our rice good and done. Now I'm just going to get my elk steak. And I'm just going to kind of lay it on the side of my rice. Put me some onions and mushrooms, some of that sauce on top of it. Since this is Mr. Brown's plate, I'm going to put another piece of steak on there because I know he'll eat both pieces. Then I'm going to take, ooh, look at that. Don't that look good? Take some of that sauce and them onions, pour it over top. And of course, we got a piece of butter bread. Can't be without butter bread. So there it is. Let's serve it to Mr. Brown. He is a man of few words when he's eating. Is it good? Thumbs up. Woohoo! If you like this recipe, give me a thumbs up, guys, and subscribe if you haven't. And God bless everybody.